Hey guys, I'm Ava, and let's talk about Pokemon. It's no secret that Pokemon cards are really, really expensive in 2025, and not only that, they're hard to get. Today, I wanted to do something a bit more lighthearted and fun and talk about some of the least cringe ways to make money selling Pokemon cards. So let's talk about some of the most fun, in my opinion, ways you can make money in the space regardless of your budget. If you don't care about the financial side of collecting at all, that's totally fine. For me, it's part of how I enjoy it, and also now my full-time career. So let's talk a bit about this. The first and I think most obvious way you can make money right now is with grading. That said, there are some caveats. For me, I don't want to grade a ton of slabs right now at the bulk prices. I think they'll go down. The problem with grading a lot of lower end cards right now is, one, the turnaround time is incredibly slow. It will take months and months to get them. And two, the market has become so efficient for these modern graded slabs, where if you get a PSA 9, it is worth the same price or less than a raw copy in almost all cases, and then you're out $18 and you have that money and that card sitting for 4 months, not being able to be traded or sold or enjoyed. So for me, someone who has a relatively large budget to buy cards, I'm looking for a lot of gold stars or Poncho Pikachus, things that are pretty high end, where the grading cost is pretty negligible to the outcome. And I can look at it and, with a certain degree of confidence, I could be like, yeah, I think this is at least a 9. I think right now, I don't want to take the chance on modern cards. I think I have pretty decent eyes for what's a 10, but I just can't justify spending all of that time. I also really, really love going to shows and looking for cards that could be a 10. I would say probably steer clear of buying cards online unless there are photos of raw cards if you want to get them graded. Everybody is grading cards nowadays. It's going to be really hard to get a PSA 10 quality on a lot of these cards, even in the Scarlet and Violet ones. One, their print quality is not very good, and two, a lot of the sellers also now are grading cards, or they have a friend who grades them, right? It's just really, really efficient on those cards, and this doesn't just apply for high-end cards. It could go for cards that are a bit more niche. For example, I bought a binder just absolutely stacked with reverse holos from EX era, and I submitted a lot of them, and I only basically got 9s and 10s, which is really, really awesome because a 10 is really big upside. But even a 9, the card raw might be $10, but a PSA 9 could be worth $50 or more for a lot of these cards. And I was super happy with that. So I think those types of cards are great examples of how you can do this even for smaller cards. Again, it's just those ones where if you get a PSA 9 and you can make money, that is like really, really good. Now, the second thing is kind of in a similar vein, which is going to be cross grading. So this is where you take a graded slab from one company and you submit it to another one. Most often, this is going to be your BGS to PSA or CGC to BGS or CGC to PSA. If you go from a BGS 9 in, say, a Gold Star Gyarados, that card in a BGS 9 might be $3,500. And in a PSA 9, it might be $4,800. Now you can weigh those options, right? Is it going to be worth sending? Some people will crack the slab to send it, by the way, but for me, I feel like I'd rather take the chance and just cross it in the case because you can guarantee a minimum grade, and at worst, you are out a little bit of time, but just the grading fee. And for those types of cards where it's very high end, even if they only accept a quarter of them, that's a really good success rate, right? Like you can make a good amount of money doing that. And I think it's just like a pretty fun thing to do. So it really just comes down to looking at those cards. For me, I like doing BGS cards that have subgrades. If the subgrades look really good, in my head, I'm like, maybe the grader will be like, ah, yes, this one has really good subgrades. This was almost a 9.5. Let's give it a 9, guys. And it's just really, really fun to look for those types of cards. But I will say, I feel like because this has become more common, a lot of people will try and charge, especially at shows, closer to PSA 10 prices, or sorry, closer to PSA prices for BGS 9s. But if you can find someone who's willing to work with you on the price, even if you're paying like full price, I think it's probably a really good thing to do as long as you enjoy it and, you can stomach the risk. And again, you could be crazy and crack the slab. For me, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. I don't have that in me. But for cross grading, it's really, really easy and super straightforward. And also, of course, you could go from something like a CGC 8.5 potentially to a PSA 9. That case, you're probably going to have to crack it, but the upside is a lot higher in that case. Or of course, going from, say, a CGC 10 that's a gem mint to maybe a BGS 9.5 or even a PSA 10 can be really big upside. And again, For me, when I'm going to shows, like at the very least, I ask like, oh, can I get whatever it goes for online minus fees? Because, you know, they don't have to pay platform fees. I think when you phrase it that way, it's a lot easier to get sellers to work with you because it's very reasonable, especially if you're going to pay with something like Zelle or cash. Definitely bring cash to shows if you're going to be buying at shows. Another great thing about this is that it can be done online. So I think it's a lot more accessible for most people, and you can do it like any day. Like you could just scroll through eBay or any other site to buy cards and look for good deals. I also recommend misprint.com. Shameless self-promo. It is my website, but you can get great deals because we have a bid system. Especially if it's one of Misprint's listings, I'm very likely to accept it because I love that liquidity. Number 3 is going to be Geographic Arbitrage. When I'm talking about this, I usually mean buying cards from Japan and selling them in the US. You can also buy from other countries or do vice versa. Korean and Chinese cards are becoming more and more popular as well, but Japanese is just very reliable. I usually use a proxy service like Buy. They have sponsored me in the past, but I used them before and after, and I'm not sponsored by them. But it's a really good, easy service. Fees are super cheap. And I'm just going to have my screen scroll through all of the Buy purchases I made. I've bought so many things on there. There's a lot of things you can get way cheaper in Japan than in the US. A really good one for a while was Japanese tag team cards, not the secret rare versions or the full arts, but just the regular ones you could get for $2 to $3 from Japan consistently and in complete sets with all of them for a really, really long time. And those would sell really quickly at conventions for around like $10 or sometimes more, depending on which one it was. There's so many things like that. It just depends on how the market is doing. 151 art rares were also super cheap from Japan. A lot of these art rares are really, really dirt cheap when you buy directly from Japan. And those like might be worth grading because they're like so easy to grade, even though the margins on them are going to be quite low because again, it's quite efficient now. I just highly recommend buying cards. I've even bought like ponchos. That stuff is a lot more risky, so you have to be able to stomach that. The sites I specifically recommend are Mercari Japan or Yahoo Japan. Both really reliable options to get a lot of cards, but especially Mercari Japan. Also, you'll often find the exact same listing on Mercari Japan and eBay. So if you see something on eBay, try translating the title, especially if it's a lot of cards, and see if you can find it on Mercari, because a lot of times it will just be way cheaper because it's to Japanese buyers, so they don't have as many fees, and you can save a lot by shipping everything all together. The 4th thing I want to talk about is buying in bulk. Again, this one is a little bit harder, but when I say buying in bulk, I'm not just saying like you have to go and buy a vendor's entire case, right? That is a very good way to get some great deals, by the way. But you can also do this with things like binders. Maybe they have a $1 binder. You could, of course, buy that and then relist those cards on TCG Player. A lot of times, you know, if you just say a price, vendors might accept it or just collectors. And for them, it's great because, again, those cards take a long time to sell, especially if it's someone who goes to shows. As someone who sold a lot of singles at various conventions like Collecticons, the singles like don't move instantly. And for me, like a lot of times I don't want to like deal with all the negotiation. And even smaller scale, if you're buying, say, 5 cards from someone, you can usually get a pretty decent percentage off, especially on singles. I think people are a lot more willing to work with you on the price. So if it's, say, $50 worth of cards, a lot of times you could offer them $40 and they might accept that, and bam, you just paid 80%. And I think that's a really great option because you could potentially grade those cards. You could keep them, of course, or you could even sell them online because you're paying, again, around 80%. That's enough to potentially make some margin. Next up, number 5, diamond hands. Need I say more? This one is tough right now because things are expensive, but if you already have a lot of stuff, sometimes it's better to actually just keep things. Like if you like spend all your time flipping things and like for a while you have cash, like you might miss a period where things really jump up. When I consider making money in the hobby, it's not always about getting cash. It's about increasing the value of like my collection or my inventory and growing that. Obviously, no liquidity crises. Really good to actually have cash. This is a really cash poor hobby. So if you can liquidate inventory effectively for close to market, I think that's a really, really important thing. So again, that could be through a site like Misprint, or number 6, vending. I think vending is a really, really fun way to engage in the hobby. And I would really recommend looking for local shows. Tables might be, say, $50 per day or $100. And for me personally, probably even more than selling cards, I love buying cards at conventions because a lot of times people will walk up to you and say, like, how much will you give me for these? Or you can also trade with people. Those are really great interactions for me personally. I really like meeting people, and especially if you go to like your local shows very often, And local might vary. It could be like 50 miles away for you. I don't know. But if you go to those often, you'll often find people who start to recognize you and you could become friends with people. I've made a lot of friends in this hobby that way, especially a lot of my closest friends in this space. So I always recommend that. So these were some of the least cringe ways I thought about making money in the hobby and some of the more fun ways. Maybe I'm wrong. This might be a horrible take. Let me know what you guys think. If there's any other good ways. I thought these were ways that were truly not like harmful to anybody. There's a lot of ways you can make money in this space that I don't think are as good, like of course scalping, but a lot of other things as well. These ones I thought are both hard to object to and actually useful right now. With the way the market is right now, I think these are some of the safer ways to engage in the hobby that aren't going to be as high risk as, say, buying pre-orders of a set like Destined Rivals. And of course, if you guys want to support me, feel free to check out my site, misprint.com. You can buy and sell cards on there because, of course, you don't really make money until you actually sell the cards. A lot of these, I'm talking about the ways you buy the cards. But if you want to sell cards very quickly, I highly recommend my company Misprint. We have a website, misprint.com, and iOS and Android apps, just Misprint. And it's a really good way to get more liquidity. And also, I found that like I do quite well with listing Grail cards on there for like reasonable prices. If you do it based off of last solds, they like tend to sell really, really quickly, and the fees are industry low fees. So very proud of that. We also have an image scanner that lets you scan like up to 20 or more slabs at once to either store, comp, or list. So even if you never want to use this to buy or sell, I think it's really helpful when researching cards. Hopefully this was a more fun and lighthearted video. Thank you guys so much for watching.